There are 3 toxic myths that keep you stuck in nice guy hell. What is nice guy hell? Nice guy hell is the life that's created when you operate under the script of, if I just be a good boy, if I just be a good person, if I just be nice and I don't upset anybody and I never rock the boat, then good things will happen to me. But what does this actually lead to? If you are just pleasing and living for other people only, which is the thing that we get taught to do when we're younger, then what's more likely to happen is you'll be invisible. You'll be invisible and not respected at your work, no matter how much energy you put into it, no matter how much effort you put into it. In your dating life, if you're just nice and pleasy all the time, you might get women choose you as a friend, but not really choose you as a dating option or want to be really, like, you know, that fiery sort of hot desire. Nope, not really. Social life. You might, you're kind of just there. You're like part of the furniture. You're kind of a butler, right? Socially, you don't really necessarily get invited to tons of stuff, or maybe you do, but you just have this weird feeling that you're kind of just an option instead of a priority. This is what it means to be in nice guy hell. And today I'm talking about the 3 core myths, the toxic myths, the underlying core beliefs that I've uncovered in my private work with men over the years on this exact issue. And if this is your first time meeting me, mate, my name is Oliver. I'm a writer, I'm a creator, I'm a men's guide. And what I like to do is I like to help men live with more authenticity, freedom, integrity, and independence. Not just in the relationships, but in their life as a whole. So let's dive in. Let's dive into the first myth. The first myth is, I am responsible for everyone else's emotions. Now this, if you really truly believe this is devastating. And let me tell you the effect that this has. So one of the effects of this, if you truly believe this, then you have social anxiety. Because now your actions, you think that all your actions cause all these emotions of other people, okay? So you now have to edit yourself. You have to watch yourself very, very carefully. Everything that you talk about, everything that you say, everything that you do, you have to have this constant watchtower, right? Constantly watching every single thing you're doing. You also have this fear of rejection, because if you believe that your worth is related to how other people feel about you and how people feel in general, and you're taking responsibility for that, well then you are going to be like, the worst thing you're going to fear is rejection. Because rejection is basically saying that you've failed to make people feel good and you're bad for that, right? So this means that you don't take action, really, not socially. You play it safe. You're very passive socially. This is what happens. And you definitely struggle to approach women and talk to them. You struggle to be an active participant in your dating life and your social life, all because you're taking way too much responsibility for other people's emotions. But the truth is, this is not your fault. The truth is, this comes from childhood. Like so many of these beliefs, programs, etc., it all stems from what we learned growing up. Maybe the role that you were thrust into as a kid was to be responsible for the emotions of everyone else in your house. Maybe your parents were emotionally immature, so they couldn't regulate their own emotional states. So, as a kid, and kids are more in touch with their emotions than most adults, by the way, you started managing and anticipating their reactions and stuff. That was your role as a kid, maybe. Maybe you were put in the position where you had to take care of siblings emotionally. So you literally were put in the position where you had to take care of children when you were still a child. Or maybe you were parentified, right? Which is slightly different to what I just said, but maybe you were put in a position where you had to be responsible for your parents' emotions. Maybe if your parents had an argument or a conflict, or they were going through a divorce or whatever, maybe they put you, your mother or your dad, most likely, this is more often with the mother, maybe she made you her emotional support network, right? This is the devastating impact of emotionally immature parents, right? They put kids in these dynamics and in these responsibilities and in these roles that absolutely devastate them when they grow up. Regardless, the truth remains. You are not responsible for other people's emotions. You're not responsible for other people's perceptions of you. That's not in your control. That's not in your sphere of influence, and it never has been. Okay? This is just a childhood way of looking at the world, and it's important to evolve past it. But we're not just going to navel gaze. Here's an action that you can take. Pay attention to all the things that you avoid sharing socially. Whether it might be some geeky interests, right? It might be some opinions that you think might be controversial, might upset people. I'm going to challenge you, mate, to share something like that next time you have the opportunity, and do not apologize for it, and do not try and sugarcoat it. Share it and watch the responses of everyone else around you and deal with that. Sit in the firestorm of those emotions. Notice your tendency to want to lean in and soften the blow and smooth everything off. Nope. Resist as much as you can. The second myth number 2, is related to conflict. It's related to confrontation. And it's this belief that conflict equals relationship death. There's no grey area. It's just A to B, all or nothing, right? Black or white. Any amount of conflict, any amount of raised voices or aggression or whatever instantly kills the relationship, no matter what. Now, this is not what happens, but we think it is. I need to share a personal story about this, to be honest, because I was a people pleaser for most of my life. It was my childhood coping mechanism. I was an MMA fighter. I had 2 MMA fights while I was a people pleaser. Can you comprehend that? I felt more comfortable being locked in a steel cage in front of a drunk audience and getting punched in the face for no money, that I was more likely and more comfortable doing that than I was telling somebody, look, that upset me. Look, I didn't like what you just said. I was more comfortable fighting than I was doing that. So this just goes to show the complex nature of the childhood conditioning that we get. They call it complex PTSD. They call it complex PTSD for a reason. And it's not because it's simple, right? So I just wanted to tell you a bit about my own personal history with that one. The problem is, though, let's talk about the problem when you avoid conflict. When you avoid conflict and you avoid confrontation, you do something that's, I can't honestly find the words to describe how devastating this is to your self-image, your self-worth, and your self-respect. You let people walk all over you. And maybe you've done this for so long in your life that you don't even really register when people are doing it anymore because it's normal for you, right? So let's think about this. If someone makes a joke at your expense, right? If someone consistently makes a joke at your expense when you're in a social situation, if someone borrows money off you and then they just refuse to pay it back, or they keep making excuses, or they keep moving the dates and whatnot, it's because they don't really respect that you'll do anything about it. If people are chronically late, right? If you're in your dating life, with your friends, people just cancel your plans and they show up late, or they disrespect your time. When you don't do anything about that, when you don't speak up about that, when you internalize your anger and frustration and make excuses for them just so you can sort of like deal with that internally without ever saying anything, then you're basically communicating to yourself, you're reinforcing this false notion that you are not a person worthy of respect. You don't deserve respect. Other people do, but not you. It's like a negative feedback loop, right? People disrespect you, you do nothing about it, you then believe that you're not worthy of respect, which causes you to then act like that, which reinforces this fucking cycle that just keeps going on for years and years and years and years and years. And then eventually you wake up and you're 30 or 40 or 50, and you don't respect yourself, you don't trust yourself, you don't like yourself, because you've had an entire lifetime of disrespecting yourself and allowing people to disrespect you. How can you possibly feel good about yourself when you've done that for so long, right? So this is how that works. But again, not your fault. What are the childhood conditions that create a fear of conflict? Well, how was conflict treated in your home growing up? Maybe conflict was devastating. Maybe it was unpredictable, chaotic, plates being thrown, raised voices, shouting, flipping tables. To a kid, that's terrifying. So maybe you want to distance yourself from that as much as possible. Maybe though, let's think of the other side of things. Maybe conflict was never modelled. Maybe your parents were just the most agreeable people with each other. So you never actually had the opportunity to understand what assertive communication looks like. It's like you didn't get the blueprint. You didn't get the training. Assertive communication is a skill, you realise that. But maybe you just got never taught this. Maybe your father was passive, nice guy, people pleaser, and you inherited those characteristics from him. Regardless of the reason, the truth is that conflict is sometimes healthy and necessary. Can you understand that? Conflict is sometimes healthy and necessary. Confrontation is sometimes healthy and necessary. We are always teaching people how to treat us. So one of the things I want you to do as an action, and I get my clients to do this as well, for the next week, I want you to get a journal, right, and get a pen, and I want you to watch yourself for an entire week and just make a note of times when people frustrate you, even if it's just like a 2% little shift in the body, when you feel anger or frustration or whatever, which might be difficult. But I want you to keep a log of this, keep a journal of this, and I want you to start considering how you would have responded and showed up differently in that situation if you were not afraid of confrontation and you were not afraid of the outcome, okay? Because we need to start building some awareness around this. Build awareness as to how you avoid conflict, what it costs you, and what you would do differently. Just by bringing some awareness up around this, you might notice in the future, you will actually, with the awareness, you will start acting differently in the moment when it occurs. Myth number 3 is all about your needs. I'm waving the book around for some reason. So your needs, right? The myth is, my needs are a burden. My needs, my desires are too much and a burden. What does this create? If you truly believe that your needs and desires and your wants, the things that you want, are a burden, then here's what you do. You settle. You settle for work that doesn't fulfill you but pays the bills, because that's what a good boy does. He doesn't want anything else. He just keeps everything nice and smooth, going, ticking along nice and easy. Shallow friendships where you never really share the full-blooded, full-fired truth of who you are. You just sort of keep things safe socially, and you have this weird shallow agreement to do the same with each other. How are you? Oh, I'm good. How are you? Oh, I'm good. Oh, fucking hell. Maybe you have intimate relationships not based on like deep intimacy, deep connection, sharing your authentic fucking truth with a woman and having that reciprocated. Maybe not. Maybe your relationships intimately become this weird sort of game playing situation where both of you are too afraid to say what you really think and feel and want because you're afraid of being rejected or you're afraid of being hurt, which I totally get, by the way. I totally get this. But all this stems from this core belief that my needs are a burden. And again, I'm going to repeat myself because it's fucking true. This comes from childhood. If your parents are distant, if your parents are emotionally inconsistent, if your parents are passive, if you cannot consistently rely on your parents to be there for you, your caregivers to be there for you, to meet your emotional needs, then what do you learn as a child, right? You learn because a child's model of the universe is egocentric, because a kid hasn't developed his or her brain, to encapsulate, to bring in the entire world as a whole. A kid's life is all about him, right? And that's just how it makes sense. So if something's not happening in the world, a kid internalizes that as being something wrong with him, okay? And that's why you have the belief that your needs are a burden right now. But there's a really toxic problem this creates in intimate relationships. And it's all related to your communication style, right? If you believe that my needs are a burden, here's what happens. Well, you are still a human being, and human beings have needs. Sometimes we wish we didn't, but we do. And if we want to be happy, genuinely happy, not just coping, we have to get those needs met somehow. Now, there are 2 ways of communicating that get your needs met. Direct and indirect, or active and passive. If you believe that your needs are a burden, what are the chances of you communicating actively and directly? Well, not very, right? But let's use a specific example here, right? Between active and passive communication. So let's say you're in a relationship with a woman and you want to have a more wild, fun and experimental sex life, okay? An active way and a direct way of making that happen, of communicating that need, might be grabbing her by the hips, pulling her close and passionately kissing her. It might mean unprompted sending a dirty text earlier in the day when she's not with you. I can't wait to do this and that to you later, or whatever. It might be telling her to take her clothes off, right? Whatever it looks like for you. But can you see how these methods I just gave as an example are direct? There's no ambiguity, right? If this is a need that you have, you're speaking boldly and courageously. You're taking a risk and you're going for it, okay? That's active and direct. Now, what's passive and indirect? Passive and indirect would be doing favors for her in the hopes that this wins you some points that she will later want to trade for sex later. You see how indirect that is, right? It might be listening to all her problems. She comes back from work and you're there trying to be the good guy. Now, I'm not saying this is inherently a bad thing, but if the intention there is to try and get sex from it, it's indirect and it's passive, okay? Now, I'm not judging. I'm just saying it's not a good strategy for getting your needs met because you're not in control. You're not in control of the situation. It's manipulative, it's indirect, and it's an unreliable way to get your needs met. And it's all based on fear. It's based on the fear of showing up fully as yourself. When you show up boldly, directly, and actively to get your needs met, you may experience some rejection. That may happen. We're not idiots. We do this for a reason. But if you can build up a tolerance to this, and if you can realize that rejection is fine, natural, and okay, then this is the strongest and most reliable way of you being yourself, living a life that's amazing, that's continuously meeting your needs, that relationships that are deep and fulfilling and actually real. Because the truth is, man, your needs do matter. Your wants matter. Your desires matter as much as anyone else's, as much as hers, as much as this random guy in the street. Like, your needs matter. I just want to really get this in your head. So what I want you to do, mate, is I want you to write down, again, let's get the journal and the pen out again. I want you to write down 3 needs that you routinely suppress, right? Either right now in your life or in past relationships or whatever. Write down 3 needs that you suppress them. And I want you to brainstorm ways that you can boldly assert them. If you are serious about dropping the mask, about being bold, courageous, assertive, authentic, not just in your relationships, mate, but also in your life, in your work, in your lifestyle, in how you live, then maybe you'll consider becoming a private client of mine. If you're interested, click the link in the pinned comment below. Check out the page. I offer a complimentary chat for 20 to 30 minutes with me just to sort of get a feel for it. No pressure, just clarity, right? Take care. See you in the next video. Stay courageous.